Hello, aviators.
Hi, aviators.
Well, yeah, aviators. Going with that, what is that, a moniker or whatever? Yeah, calling our listeners aviators. Welcome back to the Pro-Pilot Playbook podcast, where we bring you the tips, tricks, hacks, shortcuts, the insights to getting through your aviation career and get you landed into a paying professional pilot position in the shortest amount of time and the least amount of money as possible. I'm Sean Ritchie here with...
And I'm Mike Martin.
Yeah. And we got another listener question. This listener question thing is, well, I'll just be honest. They're convenient and easy for us to constantly have topics to talk about. And we feel like we're, actually interacting with our folks here. So
yeah. And a lot of times when someone answers a question in class, it's asks a question, something someone else was thinking. So hopefully a lot of our viewers find value in this because it's something they were thinking also. So what do we got, Sean?
Absolutely. Yeah. So this one's coming from Nick. And Nick asks a question via a comment on YouTube. If you have a question for us, the preference would be emailing us at podcast@propilotplaybook.com rather than leaving a comment on YouTube, because that could get missed or buried in my inbox somewhere. But Nick asks, hey guys, I have a request. Can you please do a video on how to prep for an airline and corporate pilot interview? Possibly what questions they ask, what corporate interviews consist of. I have purchased your playbook, and I would like to say it has been very successful. So
good, great.
Yeah, Nick.
Another satisfied customer.
Yeah.
We received quite a few emails over Christmas of people thanking us for that, helping them out there. So that's great. It's good if you guys do have the program and it helped you. It is good to, we appreciate it. Everybody loves compliments.
Well, just feedback in general, knowing that, it's helping people and whatever. I mean, that was the whole purpose of it. Nothing like that existed in the aviation industry. Plethora, there's that word again, whole bunch of products out there on how to actually fly an airplane, the nuts and bolts of operating an aircraft, but nothing out there on the nuts and bolts of how to move through your career, especially when you're first getting started, it's a little overwhelming. And, there's a lot of bad information out there, to be honest with you, because most of it's coming from your flight instructor, who's in the beginning of his career too. He's in his first paid flying job. And, so the whole program was designed to give you the background on how it all works. And not only that, through our, each of us have 25 years in this industry and flown for airlines and charter companies and, all kinds of goofy operations and, the mistakes we made, things we could have did better. It's all in a nice, organized, step-by-step format to get you through everything. But, anyway, sorry. There I go again on the commercial. I'm just proud of the thing. I'm proud of it,
So I think, Nick, what I would start by saying is, there's a lot of ways to prep for this. First of all, general knowledge is good. I mean, that's what they're going to ask. They're going to ask aviation related questions, instrument stuff will come up.
Are you talking about the airline? Are you talking about airline right now or corporate? Or are you general overview?
I'm a general overview, but mostly airlines, because a corporate interview would not be consistent. That it's just going to be whoever they're asking. But airline interviews are very consistent, man, because they don't want to get any trouble on asking the wrong questions of different types of people and being unfair. But I'm sure Sean knows this, but there's a bunch of very popular websites for airline interviews that share information, and they call that the gouge. Right. So one is aviationinterviews.com, I think is the big one. And that may be subscription, but they may let you see some of that other stuff. But basically, guys write in there. So they'll go interview at an airline, and then they'll write, as soon as they get done that night, they'll write everything they asked them and what happened. and it is tremendously valuable if I've got that information, because they'll give you, you'll have the questions of the test ahead of time, and you can think of what you could, what you could say. Now it may not be exactly the same, but and I've actually heard from
Well,
recruiters and people at it. Go ahead.
well, I mean, it's pretty damn close to being exactly the same because Mike,
Yeah.
like you just said, there's these people, the airlines, they know the gouges exist, and it's almost to the point now where they expect you to get
Yeah, that's
in
what
the
I was going to say.
gouge.
Yeah.
Yeah, to get in the gouge and not walk in there not knowing anything. They do it to be uniform. If
Hmm.
Mike, if you go interview today and they ask you, these 5 questions, and they're underhand softballs, they're throwing at you. And then I go interview the next day and I have a different guy, and this guy's asking me 15 very difficult technical questions that only a few guys on the planet could answer correctly. There's no uniformity there. There's no way to tell.
Which
So
candidate was better? You're not
right.
measuring everyone with the same stick.
So
Yeah.
these interviews are, for lack of a better word, scripted. I mean, they are going down a list of questions they ask every candidate. And, maybe, Mike, I think what you were saying is it may vary a little bit because, this day they may use this script, and then next week they switch some of the questions out and go off a different script. But that day, everybody's getting the same interview for sure.
Hmm.
And as you
Hmm.
look through the history on these websites with the gouges, you'll see the history of how things changed. But
Right.
yeah, it's very uniform. The airline
And
interview, yeah.
you're showing to them too that you're prepared. If you found that stuff on the internet and you've reviewed it, you're showing to them that they're prepared.
Yeah, you took
Um,
the time you want this thing. You took the time to study and yeah.
Another big tip is, and this goes with really anybody interviewing for any job, but particularly at the airlines and corporate, is you want to find and read as much information on the company as possible, the history of the company, how many employees, how they're try to get an idea of their culture, all that kind of thing, and they can tell that, and then that way, if anything comes up in the interview, they may ask you, "What do you know about this company?" And they may be impressed by that, or they may ask, "Do you have any questions for us?" And then you can ask those questions based on some research that you've already done on the company. So always, always a very good idea to know as much about the place that you're interviewing at as possible.
Sure. And Nick has already purchased the program, and I don't know if you've skipped around in there, but towards the back end of the program, we go into detail about the interview process. And the program itself is set up more for the regional airline interview, I would say. Um, and so we're kind of rehashing some things you've probably already heard us say
Right.
in the program. But yeah, the typical interview at an airline is going to be, sometimes they do some written test stuff on a computer or something, trying to weed people out. Sometimes they may actually put you in a simulator just to see how you handle an airplane. Um, uh,
Yeah.
there's usually an HR portion where you're dealing with non aviation people. They're, doing all the regular HR type questions. Why do you want to work here? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Tell me about
Right.
this. Yeah. I see on your resume you went to such and such college, blah, 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 blah. And then there'll be another part of the interview with a pilot asking you some technical questions, maybe even a panel of pilots asking you some, and it's nothing over the top,
No.
usually technical. That stuff has been relaxed a lot here. Well, before we moved into the COVID environment, a lot of the regional airlines were basically, if you showed up you were getting the job because people needed pilots so
You
bad.
could fog up a mirror.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard stories about guys going into interviews. One guy got the job. He lost his tie or forgot his tie or brought the wrong tie or something. And he interviewed
Ooh.
without a tie on, got the job.
Mm.
I heard, I forget which regional it was, but I mean, the interview consisted of like 2 or 3 HR questions, and they didn't have a pilot that day for the pilot interview portion. So they just grabbed like a line pilot that was
Mm-hmm.
sitting reserve or something that just got hired himself. And he asked him like 1 question, 2 questions or something. I mean, so a lot of that stuff
Man.
is been relaxed. I mean, when you and I went
Yeah.
through it, I mean, it was literally when I flew at the regionals, that interview, and I remember that being like one of the toughest things I'd ever went through. It was a 2-day long interview. And
Yeah.
the
It just
first thing,
depends.
there was a written test, and then it was on the computer, and then there was a psychological test on the
Yeah.
computer. Then they put us all back in the classroom where they printed all the results, and some of the guys were told to go home right after they got those results. You're done. And then the rest of us went and got in the simulator. It was an actual level D full motion, the RJ simulator, and at the time I'd never flown a jet. I'd never seen speed tapes or altitude tapes on a
Right.
electronic, the ADI and all that stuff. And, they weren't looking for perfection, but they wanted to see how you were handling being thrown into the speed of that machine and everything coming out of being a flight instructor. And then
Yeah.
then half the guys were gone off that. And then you started I mean, it was, all that stuff has changed. It's the airline interview is a layup compared to what it used to be. Now
Right.
the majors are still, I mean, Delta Airlines has one of the hardest interview processes on the planet. It's
They do a
very
strange
difficult.
cognitive light
Yeah,
pen test, and they do a physical interview where you meet with a doctor, and it's not your aviation medical; it's
right.
their own thing where they look at you. But one thing that I think is important to touch on regarding that the simulator training. So not everybody uses a level 10 regional jet simulator. There's PC based simulators. There's another type of simulator called a Frasca. But find out if you are going to interview, which interview, and you'll be able to find this out easily on the internet. If your interview has a sim ride, find out what type of simulator you're going to be flying, and then find one of those simulators and then go fly it. And that can be simpler than you might think. I mean, if it's a popular PC based simulator that a lot of flight schools use, you may be able to find one. You may have to travel, but that is tremendously valuable. And I know people that have done that because not just you don't know what they're going to make you do in it. They may make you shoot an ILS or whatever, but it's for you to have some experience on how to fly that particular simulator at that speed. Huge deal.
Yeah, and I would say that there's very few. And before I say this, I probably should have did a little more research on it than I can, just from talking to some of the guys I fly with, and some of the folks I have come out and sit right seat in the jet with me, CFIs and guys that just applied for the airlines or just got whatever. I don't know of anybody offhand that is doing the sim evaluation on interviews anymore. They're hiring. There's so many numbers. I mean, probably just from a aspect of being able to move things along more quickly. They were hiring so many people that it just didn't have time to do that type of thing. And I think a lot of these companies have figured out, it's everybody can fly an airplane at this point. That's, you're hiring a person, which is why like Delta does all that cognitive stuff and meeting with the psych eval things or whatever. Delta Airlines knows that it's everybody can fly an airplane at that point. If you're applying for Delta, they want to hire the right human being to represent Delta, and fly their aircraft. But yeah, so that's the airline interview. HR type questions, you just got to have the HR type questions, this will probably be any kind of corporate interview, even if you're just interviewing with the owner of the airplane, are still going to have some of those. You need to have some stuff in your hip pocket,
Right.
the standard interview stuff, where do you see
Sean, can you
yourself?
tell me a time where you assembled a team to overcome a problem, and how did you overcome that obstacle, and explain?
Sure, sure, that kind of stuff. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Why would you want to work here versus blah blah blah, or
Yeah.
you know, all those simple type things. You need to have something in your hip pocket. You need to know how you're going to react to it. You got to have a little story.
On a scale of 1 to 10, can you rate your pilot skills? And then you just say 11, right?
I was asked that. I was on a it was Chautauqua over in Indianapolis. They asked that question.
Yeah, I've been asked that before.
Yeah.
And then you say 8, and then they say,
really?
Why is it not a 10?
Yeah.
Why is it
not 10? Right. Well, I feel like there's always something to learn. Every time I think I got something figured out, I'm learning now that there's more to learn.
Yeah, that's true for sure.
Corporate interviews. So that's what would be a good example to compare that to. There's not going to be two that are alike. And actually, there's probably corporate jobs out there guys have where there wasn't even an interview.
Yeah.
It was probably they were looking for a pilot, and they got recommended for the job, and maybe they went out to lunch with the owner of the airplane or something, and
right.
So there's no consistency at all in a corporate interview.
No. Now the big companies, if you're going to fly for one of these, Fortune 500 companies, you're going to get a hardcore professional executive interview that they do at those companies. So you may be able to find information on that.
Sure, like a P&G or Coca-Cola, something like that. Yeah, there's going to be
Pfizer,
information. Yeah, there'll be information out there, because that's a big corporate flight department with multiple jets and multiple guys, and but even one of those jobs, you're probably not going to get that interview unless you know somebody there. Usually, it's a networking thing.
If you've got a local construction company or something that has one airplane and 2 pilots, anything could go in that interview. So it's always important to research the company, of course, and know a lot about what they do and why they do it. And then, if you know anyone that knows people that have flown there and things like that, that's another good technique. Try to get in touch with another pilot, maybe that's not interviewing you there or used to work there, and he can give you an idea of what they may ask.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah, if you're sitting in that interview, it's probably, like I just said, because you know somebody there that walked your stuff in, and you're going to have a good idea of what they're going to be asking or what they expect. Don't wear a brown suit. He hates brown, something like
that. Right. Or the best advice they'll give you, they always say, just be yourself.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks. I was looking for something with a little more... now I'm never getting the job.
right.
But in the playbook, Nick, you have the playbook. There's also some of the stuff in the corporate world. It also works any interview. We have a couple little secret tactics that we introduce and tell you about in the program, both for during the interview, some of our little things, and then for after the interview. And Nick, you'll know what we're talking about once you get to that point in the series, in the program. There was something else I wanted to say about the corporate interview stuff, though. So maybe what he meant when he was talking about corporate, he may not have been talking about corporate. He may have been talking about like a NetJets or
Oh
FlexJet.
yeah. And a lot of the airline stuff applies to that. That's a good point, Sean.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you're interviewing a large charter operator, that same website, Aviation Interviews, will have all of that. Yeah.
Right. Yep. Those are going to be very comparable, same as the airline interview.
Yep.
Actually, identical. It's the same scenario.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that's all I got on the subject. I mean,
gotcha.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, but that's a good question, and it's all you absolutely need to be prepared. And if you follow those directions, I think you'll be in good shape, be on a level playing field.
Yes. Nick, thank you for the question, and thank you for purchasing our course.
Yeah.
And if you have a question for us you'd like us to answer on the podcast, like I said earlier, email us at podcast@propilotplaybook.com and we will get it up here for you. And other than that, get to the airport. Take an introductory flight.
Flying.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
all right. Thanks for.
Yeah. Actually, Nick, you didn't mention. I'm going to send you a little message here, letting you know when this gets posted. But you didn't really mention where you're at in your training.
Oh yeah. Let us know when you do call.
Reply back. I'm curious email. Where you're at. But
great.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, folks. And we will see you next week.
Yes. Sounds great. Talk to you later.